This week, we welcome Tim Morris, Financial Services Strategist at Tanium, to discuss how to build trusted automation. In the Leadership and Communications segment, boards don't need cybermetrics, they need risk signals. Why cybersecurity is now a business strategy, not just IT. Where senior leaders are struggling with AI adoption, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly.
Right now, with Tanium, IT and security teams complete patching programs in minutes, not weeks. Reduce software vulnerabilities by up to 97%. Cut incident response times by up to 99%. This is not just IT, this is autonomous IT. Making business, your business, unstoppable. Tanium, autonomous IT, unstoppable business. See more at securityweekly.com/Tanium. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 437, recorded March 2nd, 2026. I'm your host, Matt Alderman, and joining me today, all my co-hosts are here. It's the gang's all here. So, Jason, how you doing after the snowstorm, buddy?
I'm doing great. We got over 3 feet of snow in the matter of 24 hours here, and the state was pretty much shut down for an entire week. The kids are finally back to school today, last week, all week off. So they actually had 2 full weeks out because it was winter vacation before that. So my wife and I were, going a little mental. So I'm glad they're back in school.
Yeah, Rhode Island has this weird break in February, and so they just happen to go back to back this time.
That's right, back to back. But yes, we still have a couple of feet of snow on the ground, so won't be disappearing anytime soon.
Yeah, well, I know Ben doesn't have any snow down in Austin. Oh, no. That's for sure. Welcome, Ben.
No, it's been nice here. Yeah, the weather's turned. It's kind of getting sunny. We were just talking. It's going to be in the 80s, so it was a great weekend. I was planting trees this weekend. It's looking good.
Yeah, it's nice when you're in the house and you can actually do something other than building your house.
Yeah.
And last but definitely not least, Summer Fowler. Summer, how much snow did you get in Pittsburgh?
We got a dusting, and everything is all now melted. And we had our last official games of this hockey season for my son. We get a whopping 72 hours off, and skates start tomorrow night for next season. So I'm in the off season. Can't you tell?
There's a such thing as an off season with kids' sports? I don't think so.
Right.
I don't think so. All right, one quick announcement and we'll get into it. Security Weekly listeners save $100 on their RSAC 2026 All Access Pass. RSAC 2026 conference will take place March 23rd to the 26th in San Francisco at the lovely Moscone Center. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC26 and use the code 56U5SEC weekly. I'll be there. Hope to see you there. And if you're coming, come find us in Broadcast Alley, because that's where most of us will be all week long. All right, this segment is sponsored by Tanium. Please visit securityweekly.com/Tanium to learn more. Tim Morris joined Tanium in May of 21 after retiring from Wells Fargo, where he spent 21 years. He led the cyber threat engineering and research teams within information and cybersecurity for the bank. Tim was first introduced to Tanium in 2008. However, he didn't begin working with it until 2013. Tim was privileged to have the opportunity to be one of the first to deploy and manage Tanium at a large scale of 500,000 endpoints. At the same time, he was able to build one of the best cybersecurity engineering teams in the industry. Tim, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Appreciate the invite.
All right. So I think I know the answer, but you go from Wells Fargo, you build a team, then you go to Tanium. And so just give us a little background on why. I mean, you must have loved the technology to do it, but what was kind of the impetus to it? Yeah.
Well, I was retiring, but as all a joke, I have a wife and 6 kids. And they spend way too much money. So I'm not going to retire from working. But anyway, I got to the point, it's just like the organizational changes, and I'm like, well, several vendors called. I chose, short answer, I chose Tanium because it's the only one that actually did what it said and changed quality of life. However, all the other banks, because a lot of my peers and, former leaders have moved on to other places. So, you know what? I'm going to try the vendor thing because this technology does solve problems and I want to, go after it. And just being there at the genesis of it, when it started in its incubation phase from, seeing it from the outside and getting involved, I like, this has legs, meaning it was built for an AI company from 2007, 2012. We just weren't using it for AI. And so now it's kind of come full circle. But it was a crazy transition when you're leading, you're dealing with nation state attacks all day long. You're doing, the fusion centers, the incident response, the threat hunting, the red teaming, all that's the forensics, doing all that kind of stuff. There's fun. And I did miss some of that. Then coming to the vendor side, there was a transition, just like, okay, this is very, very different from what I'm used to doing. But guess what? I didn't get called at 3 a.m. for any more calls once I retired, and get to play Monday morning quarterback. So like, okay, here's the best place to run, and this is how you win the next one.
Yeah, that's interesting. So let's talk about AI and automation and the things we can do with this technology. But it's not that easy, at least from a trust perspective, right? I mean, we've seen the opportunity for a while on how automation can help us solve some really interesting problems, but we're not leveraging it. And I think the reason we're not leveraging it is because we don't trust it yet, right? I remember the early days of intrusion prevention systems and this nirvana that I could block traffic on the network proactively. Yeah, no, it wasn't going to happen, right? So let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges when it comes to building trust with systems that can do this automation that we all want it to do, but we can't adopt it yet.
Right. That was one of the first things when I first started down this road. He was talking about self-healing, and I was like, no, I'm not going to trust that. I can't get my team, even though they did a CR change request and they have all the stuff documented, what they actually did may not match. So I'm trying to figure that out. So if you're telling me a computer can compare itself to other computers and be able to change itself, that automation did scare us quite a bit 15 years ago. So it's just like, we can't really do that. But I do believe what you're talking about is you can only trust the processes, the workflows that are around there. They have to use the data, and you have to be able to trust the data. Well, if you look at our system, I mean, we've been doing patching for 3 decades now. We have CMDBs, we have ITSMs, and we don't trust the data in them. We're always checking and verifying, getting data from other places to go figure out, is what I'm working on right now, is it still, applicable? Is it still relevant to what I'm doing? So that's part of the problem. Over the years through IT, we have this tendency, when a human messes up, we just put in more red tape. We put in another peer review. We put in another process. We go to committees and we do all this stuff and we add. So, and then we try to fix that, which organizations have, where you get more agile, pun intended, to be able to get processes through, much faster. And to your point, we're not, even now, it seems like we're trusting more of human error than we are machine error. When the machine screws up, like you said, the IPS blocks it. It's like, okay, we'll just throw that tool out because we don't want it to do anything else, or we know to set it in audit mode only or whatever. So we're having to do this paradigm shift so that we can, if we know the data is right, we know it's accurate, we know it meaning, and it's right now. It's not right like a self-driving car. You don't want to change lanes for what you learned, an hour ago. You don't want to put on, change your clothes today based on the weather from last week. You want to have real-time data to figure that out. So that's the paradigm shift now. Is like, okay, if our data is better now and we can make it better and we can learn from it. And oh, by the way, if it does make a mistake, we can put more guardrails in. Instead of adding more red tape, you just, you learn. And it says, okay, I'll make sure that the pre-flight or the validation step next time is better. So we're in a position to move forward much faster. I feel like AI in the last 6 weeks has traversed a decade. It's like everything has moved so fast just in the last 6 weeks that what we saw was light at the end of the tunnel. It's like the tunnel is shorter than we thought it was, I believe, as we move into this. But again, it comes down, automation has always been possible, but trusted automation has been the nirvana we're after. And it's pretty cool to be in this time right now, because I think we're getting there. I mean, we're really, really close.
Tim, do you think some of the fear right now is for CISOs to actually pull the trigger? We're, from 15 years ago, we have a little bit more pressure on us, right? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
A little bit more pressure from being seen as business enablers, being seen as not a department who brings friction to the organization.
Correct.
And then when you bring in a system and or a platform or an ecosystem that has a little bit of a trust deficit to it, and there's folks who can't 100% make sure that it will be that business enabler, and maybe create some downtime within the organization or some friction or some outages. Do you think there's a little bit of a hesitancy to pull the trigger? Because now we're being seen in a different light. And if we bring down the business, if we stop the business from moving forward, that could hit us from a political perspective.
Oh, it will. Yeah. You can spend or waste some political capital very, very fast if you make one of those mistakes. And so the pressure comes from different directions, Jason. I mean, it's not just I've not met a CISO. I haven't met any leader that says, hey, I don't have enough to do. I've got more resources than I need. Mm-hmm. So that pressure is coming in that not only are we hesitant to do it, but we spent a lot of money the last 2 years, we as an industry, on AI. And this year is like the year you have to execute. It's like, okay, we spent the money. We want to see some fruit. At the same time, we're being told to do more with less. So we're at this crux where, the risk is almost being made for you where you have to take it. But I'll go back to the data. The best leaders, what makes them stand above others is they know how to manage risk and know, hey, I only have like 51, I think I'm 55, 60% accurate. And they make the right decision or the right call because they trust their people, they trust the stuff. We're in an age now that the automation is, the best decisions are made with the best intel. We have the intel. It's just we have old processes that we're trying to comb through to get it. So that pressure there is real. But I think we're also what I call a leapfrog, meaning don't try to automate old processes. Now that things are different now, let's figure out how to do the process. You mentioned the fear of taking things down. I remember going through this 15 years ago, and IT ops team, which I came from, would tell us you can't patch the system because of our, HA stuff and what has to happen. I said, well, if it's truly HA, we can patch system A versus system B. And so that's what it's like. Resilience was a buzzword in finance 15, 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it seems like it's making its circuit now. Yeah. So what you asked, Jason, is a resiliency issue. Sometimes we blame it on the automation because the automation messed it up. Well, if you don't have enough margin to figure it out so we can learn, then we've got to go back to the basics of belts and suspenders and get things done in HA the way they're supposed to be done to do it. I know it's easy to say. I realize there's OT devices in manufacturing, there's healthcare critical devices, in hospitals. But for most of the stuff that we do, if you set it up in a resilient manner, it makes the processing easy so you can trust it and do more with less.
So Tim, we have a segment here that we call "Say Easy, Do Hard."
Okay,
and this is one of those, right? Where it's really easy to say, but most organizations, it's a hard time to get it over the finish line, and most organizations don't get it over the finish line, right? Which is why we have those kind of segments. So it is a risk, right? And you're absolutely right. There are foundational items that we have to get right before we can implement AI in these automations.
Right.
Yeah. I'm a believer, Tim, that like the only way we're moving forward is with automation, right? Just due to the scale, the response from threats, like, how fast threat actors can move and potentially using, these type of technologies against this, it makes the loop quicker.
Correct.
But I wonder if at the core, is it not the same issue, but a different pivot, right? So foundationally, 10, 15 years ago, we looked at this and it was, well, there's nuance here that the AI can't gather, right? That the automation systems, it really wasn't AI. It was just more automation, right? That it's going to do things that we know are going to cause problems and break stuff. But now, has it pivoted and it's more, we're scared that the AI doesn't have the human nuance, the human intuition to say, man, I know we could patch that, but we really shouldn't because X process is happening this weekend, and I'm gonna potentially cause friction with a part of the business. And so that nuance now is something that even though we could, the challenge is the human interaction there, that we're afraid that the AI is just going to do stuff without regard for the feeling impact, I guess, maybe, right? The intuition that people have about what could potentially go wrong.
Right. Well, that's why any trusted automation you put in, you trust it because you have a human in the loop, you have the guardrail set up. What you described is context, and that's what we want there will always have to be some kind of humans because so not some kind. There will always be humans because you have to provide context to get those nuances. However, I would say if you take a problem that say you had an old automation where you're just doing if this then that, the RPA robotic process on. Now what can happen is we do these things, and when they go wrong, what do? We put more red tape. We go document. Now I got to go tell everyone that here's how we're doing it differently because so and so messed up on this, and we got to
your root cause analysis.
Yeah, you got you handle it the right way, right? And if anybody that leaders had these conversations, like, are you sure you tested that? Why did you do that? Like, but we have this problem with humans. The difference now, what I see is AI is you don't have to go broadcast to a dozen, 100 system engineers, and go update their playbooks. The playbooks can be done in one place. And so what you learn is there. Also, the postmortems, we call them, after these fiascos that happen, that knowledge, even though we put it in, it's fresh, it gets lost. Well, with how AI works now, it doesn't get lost. So being able to put up the guardrails to have it so that I know that in this step ABC decisioning, or like we have what's called a confidence score. I mean, we can see the patching that's gone and we know it's 98% successful to install this Chrome extension. Okay, we're going to turn that one loose. But this hardware firmware update, it failed, 37% of the time. We're not going to run that one. It's the human that can go and say, nope, that's not good enough. So when I'm doing my crawl, walk, run, which by the way, your crawl, walk, run, you're testing your validation. I remember we didn't test like we should because we didn't have enough resources to test like we should. Meaning they would do the basics and get it done and then move on. Well, now with AI, you can have separate agents that do anything, the validation, the testing, all the way down to the full QA job if you wanted to, and do it super, super fast. So I think that's the difference is what's happened, how we're pivoting now is we've got to get out of this paradigm of how everything worked. And yes, there is a fear of screwing up, but capture it. We have a wealth of data that is sitting in CMDBs and ITSMs, and we're using these foundational models that are based on other things. It's time that you grab that data and use it. And then, oh, by the way, it's not a snapshot. You're going to continually improve that data every time you go through a process, whether that's patching, software deployment, configuration drift management, or compliance, whatever the audit might be, whether it's internal, external, all those kind of things. Those things are ripe for being able to automate, but doing it away, it's not a checkbox, it's a process so that the feedback immediately gets put in there and you don't have to disseminate it, whatever size your organization is. It's just the model. This is the right this is the process and it gets updated.
So Tim, I love that you said there has to be a human in the loop, right? I love that. But we just covered that we're being pressured to do 1,000 things, do more with less. How do we make sure in a world of autonomous everything, in a world of instant gratification, how do we make sure that the human remains the pilot and AI is the navigator and not the other way around? Yeah, because humans are humans and we want to take the path of least resistance. How do we make sure that human is the pilot?
Yeah, I love that question. And it has to do whatever you do. I'll just use a simple example of playbooks for patching. The way you do that is you set the validation steps and it can make a decision. Do I need to go path A, B, or C based upon, but when there is not a path, that it can't figure out, it has to alert and say, hey, human, how do I proceed here? That has to be set up in while you're doing it. So you set up the steps, you set up the validation, it can go do the triage. And then you still have the option, as Matt pointed out early on, to say, hey, I'm just going to watch this for a while. I'm going to be in an audit mode to figure out what it would have done. And it tells you, and oh, by the way, it's going to give you a lot more information than your typical, say, system engineer, or if you go to a SOC or IT ops role, an analyst, help desk, whatever, it's going to give you a lot of that. And it will tell you what what is thinking to do it. And so it's part of coaching. So the human gets to do it, but you always say, hey, if you're not here, just you back out, you do it. These are the green lights and these are the yellow lights. And you set that up in the beginning so that the human is always in there. And then it does get back to trust. In the beginning, you're going to go slower. You're just going to watch more and see, but then the confidence is going to build up and what it's going to do, and as long as you're putting the correct security boundaries on what it's doing and those kind of things, and it does automate. I've seen some pretty incredible things just in the last 6 months, like entire patch teams. It takes 30 hours to get something done. It's done in less than 4. I mean, it's like now those people get to go do more stuff because they've done the process enough that they know that AI is doing it the right way. And oh, by the way, they're learning stuff as like, oh wow, I wouldn't have thought to do it that way, because it's pretty cool what we can do with AI right now. And yes, I do understand the fear of it's taking over the world. I don't see it that if we don't let it.
Tim, I want to shift gears as I think about your career at Wells Fargo, in the threat hunt and the threat work that you did. What are you seeing as some of the striking ways that AI is changing from the threat side and not from the cybersecurity side that we've been discussing?
See it two different ways. First of all, is being able to the hunting and the triaging. So we can say pre-incident, post-incident. So the hunting is, I call the first mile, going and finding things and taking intel feeds and be able to digest that and just go look across. So for example, Tanium, all the endpoints, and being able to process so much data that you can go see the outliers. You can get through the noise so much faster. That's a big one. So that triage is happening, whether it's like an alert that comes up, and whatever security vendor you have, EDR tool, those kind of stuff, they're all building this in. We already have it in your SIMs and SOARs. That is one, shine the light where the problem is very, very quickly. The difference is now we can remediate. Then I'll flip on the other side. So if you get to the IT ops and analyst side, which by the way, we do need as an industry to get back together. Good cybersecurity is IT ops done well, and everybody's doing their stuff, and getting, what they need. That part gets more and more robust so that the threats themselves, like when something happens, let's say this configuration drops or this version, somebody loads a vulnerable version of Notepad++. That can be automated. That, okay, you might want to block it so they can't be, but when it happens, you immediately do whatever, send an alert, create a ticket, or fix it. I mean, you go do that. And that opens a whole new can of audit and what we call continuous compliance, or I like the term pervasive governance, because all my GRC friends, that's what we need. That's what we need. But the threat stuff is your point, Summer. That is so cool. I'm at a conference this week, and I just saw somebody. I thought you were going to ask about the AI threats themselves and poisoning and hallucinations and jailbreak. I've seen some pretty cool things from the red team doing that kind of stuff. And yeah, there's some more work to be done. But for most of what we're doing, that we're just putting, people after, is like, I forget which CEO it is. The agent should be doing the work, and all of our people, even our individual contributors, they manage a workflow. Now they just manage agents that do the workflow, and then have the check-in. That's the path forward, in my opinion. But you got to go fix the fundamentals. The CMDB has to be right. The ITSM logs and stuff has to be right. And then if you move into security, it's the same thing. They've got to work off the same data. And in the large organizations, and being on this side, going to organizations, to see that divorce between IT ops, and security, and even in security, the divorce between what GRC does and the very adversarial relationship they might have with first line, second line, and all those kind of things, that has to come together. We can't trust any data if we can't trust each other that we're trying to do the exact same thing, to secure, whatever the organization is we're working for.
So you basically told us we're hosed because none of us have good asset inventory. So we're like all stuck right now.
That's the too hard part.
Right.
No data classification, no inventory.
Exactly. So here lately, I've been saying AI. When I say AI, I'm not talking about artificial intelligence. What I'm talking about is asset inventory, asset intelligence, and then you get to autonomous. Right. And you have to go that order. You can't skip a step, Yeah.
And I think that's important, right? Because as we think about the building blocks to get to this automation, this autonomous, and it should be autonomous governance instead of pervasive governance, by the way. I like that term better. Right? Yep. You have to have the foundation right. And the foundation starts with the asset inventory, right? So this is where we've seen still the struggles. However, AI is helping us start to bridge the gap, right? My CMDB is not up to date, but what are the other sources of asset data do I have out there? And how can I start to bring all that data together in a better way? This is what generative AI is really, really good at, which is context and enriching your existing data with these other sources, right? So I agree with you. asset inventory to asset intelligence is a huge first step. And I think
Correct.
the one that we're kind of in right now,
It
at
is.
least from what I see, Tim. So I'd love your point on that, because until we can get there, then I don't have the data to send to the AI engines to get to the next one, which is the autonomous side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just garbage in, garbage out, and you can
Right.
automate. Somebody say you can't automate chaos. I'm like, oh yeah, you can automate chaos. You just create more chaos much faster.
Right.
If you take the bad stuff. So here's my analogy or thought processes. When I think of asset intelligence, that entire process, it seems very like simple, but we know it's easy, as you say, but it's hard to do. Okay. Because all the things that go in from womb to tomb, whether it be an asset or an application, even identities, all those kind of things that you're dealing with, all the entire process, we still, in my opinion, a lot of organizations still work in this checkbox mentality that I have to do inventory like a grocery store shelf. I do it at tax time, or I do it once a quarter, or what. It doesn't work that way. Asset intelligence means that, and I want to get out of the mindset that we're just scanning it faster, to get more data. Asset intelligence, I'm liking, I got young grandkids now, but like we're watching Toy Story. You remember Toy Story, all the toys come to life and they talk to each other about how they feel like. I see endpoints that way. I see applications that way. It's like they're treating us like dumb devices, but I know everything about me. I can tell you everything about me. And you could, I can do my own agent to tell me about me and the CMDB. So the intelligence is constantly flowing from this cradle to grave life cycle of everything that's happening. And yet the human has to provide context like geography, where you're at, what line of business you're in, all those kind of things. But Matt, to your point, if we can't get there and we're still going to be stuck with these old 2 decades old inventory models, then our hope to get to autonomous, it's going to fall short. So the inventory is like the baby step, but asset intelligence is, once I do it, now I have a process that this asset, whatever you call it, CI, CMB, has a way to be able to constantly tell me everything, whether configuration changes, a serial number changes, a version changes, that kind of stuff. And we have the technology. I mean, it's not like a pipe dream. We have it. It's just typically what I see is people are responsible for different things. And if they don't like the asset inventory, they'll go build their own system to get another asset inventory system. Now, like instead of 2 policies, you got 3 policies. It's like everything just kind of divides and multiplies. I used to raise rabbits as a kid.
Well, remember, it's 6 degrees of separate, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? But think about all the things to know about an asset, right?
Correct.
There's configuration data, there's vulnerability data, there's all these kind of degrees that hang off of it. And I've got multiple systems that potentially have it. So by consolidating that, providing that context so that the asset knows everything about itself at any given time from all the available sources is the foundational step for these autonomous capabilities to start to move forward, right?
I like to say, I don't like the phrase, and every vendor, a lot of vendors use this, single source of truth. I don't care for that phrase because truth is not an average. And every place I have been, people just take, whatever tool you're responsible for or whatever, and they take and then they just kind of average it up and say, okay, this is what we're responsible for. And I'm like, no, raise your hand if you're not here. I need to know what changed, from the last time we look at this, what
Right.
was added new, what got taken away. So if we get to that point where to me, the truth is every asset knows its truth. It knows what it is. You just have to put the process in, which you can automate so that you're always getting the truth from, in my case, 530,000 different endpoints, tens of thousands of applications that I have truth at my fingertips to go make a decision to do what I need to do.
Then your workflow using automation now speeds up the execution of those decision processes downstream, right?
Absolutely. I was surprised. The reason I went to Tanium was for incident response, meaning I was tired. I was a reversing malware guy and I was chasing malware outbreaks for a decade. Even when I was in IT ops, they'd pull me over to security to chase the malware outbreaks, and they would take weeks to get out of the network. I mean, and sometimes I still wasn't sure we got them out. So we bought an incident response tool because we couldn't trust the CMDB data to figure out where EDR was running and where it wasn't, because the attacker turns EDR off. So, you're dead in the water. So what happens is, now when you get used to, and I will say once we installed it, I never had another malware outbreak. We had tons of malware attacks, but when it happened, we got it squashed, got it out of there within minutes or hours. I think the longest one I had was 2 hours. And then that's a huge difference, to get that. When you have that kind of data to make those kind of decisions, then like you said, Matt, it changes your other processes. It's like, oh, I never thought about, we're still dealing with reconciling spreadsheets that somebody emailed to see if the patch and the bones check. And we're volleyballing back and forth to figure this out. Like, well, no, what if we just all use the exact same data all the time? I had a boss that would tell me, he would like actually return an email if I had a spreadsheet attached to it and said, no, this is not automation. We can't work this way.
I feel like, Tim, you're missing an opportunity to take your AI and turn it into like the evolution of man, where you have like asset inventory, asset intelligence, autonomy,
Correct.
and you could have a really cool graphic of that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I always say, Tanium's been known for like speed and scale, but the other pieces that you need with the nuances is sophistication. Meaning some of this stuff is easy to say, hard to do, but with AI, you can handle the sophistication and still do it at speed and scale. You got to get there. But I like that, Summer. Yeah, but it is asset AI to me, asset inventory, asset intelligence. Then we get to autonomous or artificial intelligence.
So Tim, in IT and cybersecurity, there's always this little nuance in the back called sprawl.
Yes.
How do we avoid automation sprawl, where automations and agents start stepping on each other's toes? Now you risk that context being truth coming back, right? If they're stepping over each other and they're conflicting with each other, you said earlier, garbage in, garbage out.
Mm-hmm.
How do we stop any type of sprawl when it comes to these automations?
Well, it's a very, very good question. I do sessions. Shadow IT and shadow AI are a problem. Everybody has this different emotional reaction to change. Gartner has a hype cycle. I call it the emotional stages. So we got this excitement, the trigger, the excitement. Then we have the prohibition. We're never going to do this. I remember CISO, CEOs telling me in January 23, we're not going to use AI. And then by April of that year, like, how do we use AI? So you have to treat it like every other shadow IT or tech debt problem, in my opinion. So you have to set up the governance. Again, you don't get the transformational until you go through what I call the socializations, the standardization, and the governance, so that you avoid what that is. That's not easy to do. That is a hard problem because humans are humans. And I always call it the layer 8 problem of the OSI model. People want to build, there's politics involved. People want to build their fiefdoms. So they want something faster, better, because they didn't think central IT was fast enough, or security, was quick enough, flexible enough for their needs. So you have to address that at a leadership level and say, hey, this is the standards, and you can look in your industry, finance, healthcare, manufacturing, retail, whatever, and see what's already out there. There's some good frameworks, like risk frameworks. Use those to your advantage to make sure that we don't, because again, the solutions yesterday were to old problems, and the problems we're dealing with, the solution we're building now are based upon those solutions. So we have to get really, really good at understanding that, hey, I am building future tech debt. How do I not do that? To not get past that sprawl. And I don't have a very straightforward answer, other than the point is we have to do it. And I do think they were a little better if we're singing off the same song sheet, going after the asset intelligence, and we all have the same vision and goal, which requires a leader to set that vision and goal. You can avoid a lot of those pitfalls. And even if you don't avoid them, you catch them faster and course correct when they're not, and when somebody has gone off to do their own kind of thing. By the way, I just 2 weeks ago, I think we released the shadow AI. Was such a big deal, with OpenClaw and that whole stuff. It's like, how do I know it's there? I liken it. I'll go age myself back to 2003, 4, whenever SQL Slammer happened, and like, no, we know where all the SQL developers are, and we don't have that problem. And then the worm hits, and it's like, oh, we didn't know everybody would want to be a SQL developer. They have it, running.
That's SQL sitting under their desk. Yes,
exactly. Well, that's what's happening with AI right now. With everybody, if you don't have policies like whatever we're going to use, Claude and Chat, Copilot, Gemini, whatever you're going to use, set the standards, put your controls around those standards, and then look for the outliers, which we're doing right now. So I can know, okay, so-and-so downloaded OpenClaw. If you don't have the controls, like at your proxy level or whatever blocking it. But you have to be diligent, Jason. It's not something you can just write a policy, tell people to go do it, because humans are humans, and you got the good, well-intended people that are mavericks who would you want those people working on your problems, right? They're creative, they're engineers, they want to solve problems. You want those people. Give them the leeway to do it and the guardrails to do it. Because if you prohibit it and just say, no, we're only going to do this, you're begging for that sprawl that you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, the good news is AI can help us get there faster. The bad news is we still have core fundamental issues we haven't solved in the industry yet that are going to block us from getting there. But Tim, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thank you very much.
Yes. If you want to learn how to build autonomous capabilities with confidence and trust, please visit securityweekly.com/Tanium. Zero trust is clearly the future as threats get faster, quieter, and harder to detect. But implementing it shouldn't disrupt the business. ThreatLocker enforces default deny-it execution in a way that remains enterprise-ready, scalable, and operationally clean. Unknown software is stopped cold, trusted apps stay contained, and drift is locked down across the environment. It's zero trust that works in real enterprises and prepares you for the threats ahead. See why CISOs are adopting it at securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software deployment and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/Meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/Meter, METER. This episode is brought to you by Adaptive Security, the first cybersecurity company backed by OpenAI. AI has fundamentally reshaped the threat landscape. Today, the greatest risk isn't someone breaking into your systems, it's someone breaking into your trust. Deepfake voices join in your video calls. AI-crafted phishing emails that perfectly mimic your executives. Even synthetic job applicants entering through the front door. Adaptive Security is designed to counter these new realities. The company delivers real-time attack simulations that show security teams exactly what modern AI-driven threats look and sound like, and prepares them to respond effectively. Learn more at securityweekly.com/adaptive. All right, now we move from AI into this week's articles, which might have some AI in them. I'm just saying,
Just a smidge.
it's just a sketch. It's leadership communication, Anyways, there's definitely some in here. All right, so starting article, boards don't need cybermetrics, they need risk signals. Yes. However, I didn't see many risk signals in here.
I didn't. And for me, the article focused on shifting toward the right risk signals to the board. But my fear is that it gets a little gray because the context matters. Know your audience. Those technical risk signals are still important, but at the right levels, right? So don't shift away. Just know the audience and bring the right information to the board, I guess is what I'm trying to say here.
The metrics inform the risk signals, right?
Exactly.
There's a connection, and if you don't tie that together, you have to have that as a substance of why the risk is so important and why you need to focus on them. Yeah.
So we can't move away from those metrics because those raw metrics matter, right? It's just, how you take that information, make it intelligent,
last week to the
right?
board.
And then action it with risk conversations to the board.
Yeah. And I think the next article does a better job of starting to lay this out, which is why the next article is there. But before we get there, there's some things in here. First of all, board only cares about money. Pretty much that's right. It's true because they do. They're fiduciaries, right? So they're responsible for, the business and how the business is running and returning shareholder value. But to your point, Jason, right? The technical stuff helps to understand what those potential impacts are, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's about, based off of the technical data I have, how do I translate that into likelihood and impact in a way that they understand the potential risk to the business and to those dollars, and do that in a succinct way, right? Like that's really what needs to happen. This article unfortunately doesn't do it, but
No.
it is the way we should trend.
Right. And it's kind of funny, like the second article, once you start getting into that, it lines up the conversation the right way, right? This is a business risk issue. It's a financial exposure issue.
Right.
Yeah.
It does say cyber risk is not an IT issue. I would argue that it is an IT issue as well, right?
Yes.
It's not.
But at the end of it, if you start to scroll down, there's a section that says board level metrics that matter.
Oh my.
It starts getting into the technical, mean time to detect and
Yes.
respond,
Right.
right? Phishing resistance rates. Now that just sent me off the cliff because
Me too.
you're saying that we need to be more strategic. You're saying that we need to speak to the business, and then you bring these technical items to the table as far as metrics. We should be talking about exposure duration and risk instead of the mean time to detect and respond, right?
Right.
Yeah.
We should be talking about resilience gaps instead of, the detailed asset monitoring information. So, I think it fell off in the metrics that matter. Those aren't the metrics that matter.
Oh, I
Not to
felt
the
like
board.
this article
the
and the
board.
fourth article were AI generated. It's the style
Yeah,
of them.
honestly, I think there's a good chance, and I agree. There was another one in here. It may be that one as well. I'll have to go to my notes once we get to it. But yeah, this one was a 50-50 for me. Absolutely. I think there's definitely some AI influence to it, no doubt.
Oh, for sure. But what it does is it sets up from the previous article, it sets up some of the foundational things that I think people have to think about around cyber risk and the different types of risk and the impacts, right? And then it does a good job until you're right. It gets to the board level metrics and then they go back. It's like third-party risk exposure. Yes, that's a good one, right? Like that's
Yes.
a really good one.
Yep.
But backup recovery testing results, that's a resiliency check, right? Like nobody cares about that. It's like, what's our exposure from a resiliency perspective? Where would we have an outage or downtime that has impact to the business, which is part of that calculation, right? And these ones around phishing just drive me bonkers every single time. We've been doing phishing campaigns and security awareness and training for 20 plus years now. Have we really made that big of a dent in the human risk side of the equation? No, because it's still a huge portion of how these breaches happen. So obviously,
it's actually not getting better either, right? Like, I mean, if we look at the way where phishing is headed in the last 2 or 3 years, it's gotten exponentially better due to the implementation of AI, right, in crafting stuff, and even the cost of tailoring it. Like, if I wanted to tailor something to Jason and scrape social media, look at all the information out there, very low cost to entry to do that, right? And so, if I send that to Jason, then the odds that he clicks on it, even though he's really knowledgeable about this, could be fairly high, right? It's hard. So that's not where to put the effort into this.
Agreed. And, I even looked at the phishing one. I looked at the third party risk, and that's not even strategic enough because we should be looking at human capital risk because it's not just about phishing. It's about insider threat. It's about other things that
but
human capital, right?
The article actually had the answer earlier. The first article said all they care about is money, the board, they being the board. And then this article kind of broke it out a little bit more, and I liked it, where they said the 4 business pillars: the financial risk, the operational risk, regulatory and legal, and reputational. I like that. And then they just abandoned the concept of this and started talking about technical measures.
Exactly.
Instead of saying our biggest operational risk would be losing this third party, provider, or it's also a reputational risk. They just abandoned
it's supply chain as a whole, right, Summer? Because it's not just third party risk, it's the supply chain concentration risk and dependency risk. And hey, by the way, it's not just third parties. There's fourth party vendors. There's fifth party vendors. There's that depth of the supply chain that we have to be thinking about. So it's bigger. It's a bigger strategic conversation than just third party risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as you position that, if you're thinking that when you get in front of the board that they want these details, they don't. They want the confidence that you understand the problem and that they can rely on you to put a solution in place, right? And their job is not to eliminate all risk. It's to prioritize, right? And do an assessment and say, is the juice worth the squeeze? Do I spend the money on this? Do I spend the time on it? versus spending the time or the money on something else. And if you can't make the compelling case that this is where the seesaw comes out, you're not going to get the funding.
Because ultimately that's the board's job. It's to say, all right, what do we need to be doing to help mitigate this risk? Do we need to invest money? Do we need to invest people? Do we need to invest partners? Like that's the decision they want to make.
It's a finite pool.
Right.
Like you're going into that conversation against everybody else who thinks their thing is more important than your thing.
That's right.
You have to convince the board.
And what's the board going to do? How do we make our money make more money? That's the first thing they're going to think about.
So, Ben, that kind of leads into article number 3, the cybersecurity question most CEOs have never thought to ask. Now, this website is a little tough to navigate. So anybody who goes out there, I apologize in advance. It's got so many ads inserted in it. It's not even funny. But you got to scroll all the way down to the bottom to get to the meat of this article, which is what the CEO should be doing. And it ties into your point, right? You're there because you've been hired to do a job, and how well do you understand that job, and how well can you articulate where the potential risk to the business is, right? And that's some of the questions here that these CEOs should be asking, is sitting down and saying, hey, CISO, where are our top risks? Like, why should I care about this? Like, sit down and actually have that conversation. It doesn't get to that until you're way down here in the bottom of that article. But those are some of the conversations that I don't think we're having that are the ones that we should be having. Just like, tell me the top 3 and why you think they're a risk and what do you think we should do about it?
And for you to know that, you have to understand the business.
Yep.
Like you can't come from cyber or IT and sit in that seat and say, well, I understand cyber and IT, so I know. No, your business, even if it's in the same vertical, your business is different than the next business, right? It'll share commonalities, but it'll be somewhat different. The nuance there. So like you've got to make that your mission so you can have the conversation with the CEO and express that you understand the business. And then they'll kind of a light will go off and be like, oh, this guy understands, or girl understands the business. Mm-hmm. I now can have a conversation with them because they built credibility.
There's a whole section in the middle that talks about when certifications aren't enough and how businesses use certifications as kind of that proxy to hire. Where, great. It's a great foundation. It's a great framework to work by. But at the end of the day, you need to have some business acumen as well. And that should be one of the criteria to hire a CISO.
And
now, my question to you,
the business doesn't do a good job in many cases of mentoring people along on that part of the journey, right?
Right.
It's the CISSP, the C risk, which is okay, but still it doesn't like CISM, like they're not geared towards that.
They're not at all, right? And my question to you guys is, the article positions itself as, here are the questions CEOs should be asking. I've worked under many CEOs, and sometimes they don't know what they don't know. And what's our responsibility as business executives and cybersecurity and risk executives to help mentor the CEO in the questions they should be asking? Because I think we own some of that responsibility in building that relationship and building that trust, like you had mentioned earlier, Ben. So that way we can guide them and say, hey, here are some questions we should be really digging into here. And kind of get them on board and train them a little bit because they're not used to having these conversations in many instances.
Yeah.
Is that something you guys agree with? I mean, I think we hold some responsibility.
I think the challenge for me, Jason, is getting the time, right?
Sure.
Because it's always hard to get that slice because, again, what are they focused on? They're focused on the CFO, the sales leader, and marketing, right? Like those are the 3. And like anybody else is like, what are you doing for me to make money, right?
Yeah.
And you've got to come in with some knowledge, I think, bring the right questions to that table. But I'd like to see CEOs come with a bit more inquisitiveness, right? Like have an interest. Now, you're not always going to get that. But if you could kind of meet from both sides of the street, right? Come with the questions that, hey, you should be thinking about this and why. And the CEO, like, hey, I'd like to spend a half an hour with you every other week, right? And like have that dialogue. I think then you can get some real good conversations for the larger context of the C-suite meetings, the board meetings, to really go over some stuff that's going to actually move the needle.
I think it's almost like a maturity model, right? You have to assess your CEO and say, how mature in the cyberspace are they? In the risk space are they? If the maturity is low and, their focus is on CFO, chief revenue officer, marketing, HR, those type of things, how do you gain influence? Well, you start working with those folks that he trusts or she trusts, right? So maybe, like I said, one of your best friends is the CFO. Have conversations with the CFO and say, hey, this is an important topic. Let's start talking about how this can affect revenue, how it can affect client relationships, how it can affect us from a regulatory perspective. And then the CFO can plant seeds for you.
And I love that maturity model because it calls into question, like, a lot of people who don't have the context of that. Like if you want to go from maturity level 2 to 4, you can't jump over 3.
That's right. That's right.
Right. So if you realize that your CEO is only maturity level 2, right, your playbook has to be a maturity level 2 playbook to bring him to a 3.
That's
to bring
right.
him to
That's
a 4.
right.
Right. It's a journey to get there.
I can guarantee you during the hiring process of the CEO, the board of directors weren't asking cybersecurity questions.
Yeah.
But the board probably doesn't know either. And I do think, Ben, you're right. The CEO does need to come with questions. Although I agree with Jason that I think that it is incumbent on the CISO to actually queue up the questions, especially, in the beginning as you're building the relationship. I think you've got to queue it up.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, both you and Jason Summer. What I'm saying is it's incumbent on the CEO to make some time.
Yes. Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
Right.
Time. All right, next article. I think, Summer, you think this one's AI generated, even though it does have an author, by the way. Why cybersecurity is now a business strategy, not just IT. It was interesting. Tim said something in the first segment about, security and IT ops need to come back together. It was an interesting statement that he made. And I was thinking about this article a little bit. Like, we've known this for how long now? Like, the thing for me on this one is this publication's called Futurism or something like that. Like, well, then we're way ahead of our time because we've been talking about this for like 7+ years.
Yeah.
The reason I think this one's AI, it's the style of this.
Yeah.
Is it's either it's really, really trendy right now, or it's what I see coming out of AI. I have connections on LinkedIn. And you can see when they do LinkedIn posts that are in this style. And I always think they're AI generated. And I've asked some people, like, why are you posting more? And they said, well, I'm trying to build a brand for myself. And I said, well, what you really need to consider is that you want your brands to appeal to people who are more successful and smarter than you. What you're doing is actually putting out content for people to read who are less successful and less smart than you.
Yeah. It's just clicks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the problem with these articles, right? Like, I look at this, you look at the title, Why Cybersecurity is Now a Business Strategy, Not Just IT. It just rattles off a bunch of stuff that we already know, right? Like, we talk about it every week on the show. So what's the compelling story here? It's just basically just regurgitation of a bunch of facts that have been consolidated into one article.
It's about 5 social media posts combined into one. Right. That's what it is. Honestly, it's like 5 social media posts combined into one to make a column or an article. And I can almost guarantee this was heavily assisted or completely AI generated.
Yeah, like if you look at the bottom of every one of these sections, there's like a couple sentences, right? Security used to be a defensive layer. Now it's strategic posture. Okay, so what? Like, what's the outcome of that? Like, is there a takeaway or just like...
Right. No, it's just a statement of fact. And some of the facts in there completely contradict the next story, which is the CISO's already reporting to the CEO. That's a matter of fact in this article, right? This has already happened. And then you go to the next article, it's time to rethink CISO reporting lines. So if we're thinking about CISO reporting lines, which we've also talked about for the last 7 years on the show, those two are misaligned. If it's already happened, and security is already strategic, and the CISO is already reporting to the CEO, and this is all fact, then why is it now time to rethink the CISO reporting lines?
Yeah.
Well, it's weak statements of fact too, right? So like that fact that's called out. Chief Information Security Officers increasingly report directly to CEOs or boards. So if you went up by 0.1%. That is a true statement. They are increasingly there's significance to that. And I think everybody on this would say that's not really true. We're not seeing that. It is more frequent, but not materially so, right? And to the last question we were talking about, and the point Jason brought up, I don't think CEOs are necessarily making the time, right? It's that slice of pie and the ever-increasing C-level suite where everybody's a C-level member and the CEO can't have 12, 14, 20 directs. It doesn't work.
Yeah, right.
Right.
100%.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, their CEOs are actively slimming down their direct reports.
Yeah.
Because it's ballooned out so far now, it's unmanageable.
It's not scalable, right?
No.
Yeah. You're almost running, the CEO is almost like a holding company into himself, and he's running these independent fiefdoms, right? In very large organizations. And, then these people become responsible for their own fiefdoms. The scale is very, very challenging.
Yeah. Agreed. And then I look at this next article in the Rethinking the CISO reporting lines, and I go back to the conversation we had with Tim and how security and IT operations need to work closer together. This article, right? And look, we've debated this discussion for a lot, right? Is yes, the CISO reporting to the CIO does create some conflict of interest. However, if the goal of security is to have more resilient systems and not bring down those systems, and by doing that we make the environment more secure, then maybe having them closer together isn't a bad thing. I don't know. I
always question that though, because where we stand today, cybersecurity and the risk management around it isn't always central to just IT. There are HR components, right? There are different components that are not IT that we're dealing with. There's regulatory and legal components. So for me, it's more risk officer than anything.
Well, and the CISO isn't. So we have a problem with this with words, right? And I'm a big words matter, right? You got to use the right word for the right thing. It's not the cyber information security officer. It's the chief information security officer. Cyber's only one component of that.
That's right.
Cyber became a sexy sounding word and everybody wants to be part of cyber. But that's only one component. To your point, Jason, there's legal, there's regulatory, there's human resource capital. There's all different types of things that compromise that. And if you think about it from that perspective, it shouldn't be part of IT. Should be reporting. I'm fine if you want to call it a chief risk officer and then it starts to become part of that. And security is part of chief risk officer's role.
Right.
But it's just misaligned. And I think to the point we were talking about with the prior guest, incentives matter. How you incentivize people to do work. If you think operational incentives are about uptime, then there's always going to be a conflict with security, because it's going to take time away from uptime to fix, patch, and remediate things. You got to think about how you're incentivizing and how your bonus structure works and what you're trying to do. Set the right MBOs to get the right output from the function. If you don't do that, you'll always be catching up.
Yes. So the stats in this article are interesting, right? 64% of CISOs still report into IT, typically the CIO or the CTO, right? Just 11% report to the CEO. Back to the previous article, which is like, oh yeah, it's increasingly, no, it's not, it's 11%, okay? Right. But then you look at the next four, CFO, chief risk, legal, and other is 20%. So that's basically double of the reporting line into the CEO, right? The CISO reports more outside of the CEO and the CIO than it does in some respects to the other team. So, these are interesting dynamics. I think a chief risk officer structure, Jason, kind of makes sense in some respects, where maybe the CIO, the CISO, they all roll up into that structure, right? But then, is the chief risk officer part of the CFO's organization or separate? Like, you could get into all kinds of debates, but anyways.
Big time.
Yeah.
No, because finance is a risk.
Right.
I'll argue that. Yep.
Finance is a risk. Oh, so the CFO reports to the CRO.
Good luck trying to get that to happen.
Yeah, no fake.
Yeah.
No, because you know why? Because Sarbanes-Oxley, at least from a public company perspective, that'll
Yep.
never happen because the CEO and the CFO have to sign off on
Yeah.
all the financial reports, which means they're going to be a 1-2 combination no matter what, right?
I mean, coming out of these articles that we're reading, I'm just going to say it, and people will probably get upset, but the likelihood of a direct report to the CEO at this point in time is slim.
Slim.
It's slim.
Yeah, it's true. Last two articles, kind of our AI wrap up here. Where senior leaders are struggling with AI adoption, and this is coming from research. So they went out and they surveyed a bunch of executives across global enterprises to kind of understand where things are breaking down. Basically, it boils down to continuous disruption. Like it's not like one and done. It's not like a transformation project to where I went from on-prem to the cloud, right? And when I do that, I'm done. This concept that AI is going to continually disrupt is challenging to leaders, right? Contested definitions of value. Where am I getting value out of this technology and where am I not? Look, even as an industry, we still struggle with this, right? Just because I built this brand new fancy chatbot using AI doesn't mean it's really providing a whole lot of value, okay? There are places where it is providing value, for sure.
Yeah, the cost on a lot of these initiatives from an AI perspective are exceedingly high, right? So I don't know if we talked about this, but I saw an article, I want to say it was like 3 weeks ago, and it was saying that very large memory manufacturer, their supply of memory chips was sold out for the rest of 26 already.
Yes.
Like completely wiped, right?
Yeah.
So if you wanted memory and you already had in place an order, you're done. So this is going to start impacting everybody. And I think people are sitting down. It's the same thing we've seen in security and going, man, that's a lot of money. Like, what have I gotten from the last bucket that I gave you like last year? And you're telling me this is like marginally better? Like what? How am I getting value out of this? I don't think people are tying it directly together.
At the end of the day, though, we've been treating AI like this experiment, and it's an expensive experiment, instead of treating it like a business initiative. Right? I mean, AI at this point is, I don't know, 10% technology, and the rest is like the operating model as to where it's going to add value in your organization. Like, we got to think about it. Where are the use cases? Where it's actually going to move that way.
If we don't do something, our competitors are going to win. That's the way it's being pitched. Right?
And it's at all. Do something. Do anything. Just say we're using AI. Go. Instead of actually putting in the hard work to figure out where it's going to move the needle.
Every time I talk to a vendor now, it's hey, I've got some AI in it. And honestly, like it's challenging for me because it opens this whole other set of issues that I have to deal with. I'd rather them not have AI in it.
Seriously.
Because I don't have to cross all the I's and dot the T's.
But it fills the AI checkbox that the board and the CEO have mandated. We have to do AI. Go.
Well, and I do think that we talked about this before. One of the things that all executives should keep into their minds is we have a strategy, and we should determine how and if AI is going to help that strategy, not what is our AI strategy. Now, your strategy may include learning more about AI.
Yeah.
But that's a very different approach than saying, let's have a whole dedicated strategy to AI. It doesn't make any sense.
How can you leverage AI to execute on your strategy faster and better?
Yes.
Right? That's the way you should think about this, right? This is why you get all these divided responses to change, and you're getting the change because people aren't seeing the potential value. It's like, why are we wasting all this time? We're not going to do it. Article, OpenAI just raised 110 billion and it still may not be enough, right? I mean, they just keep raising money, right? All these. Yes. Right now, it's just one big experiment. Now, there are companies out there, because I work with them on a daily basis, that are actually using AI for what? Effectiveness, efficiency, scale, things that you can do.
Business problems.
Exactly. And Tim was talking about this a little bit. Once you have your asset inventory, and then you have your asset intelligence, and then you have your, what was it? Summer was number 3.
Autonomous
Autonomous
inventory.
Intelligence.
Yeah,
Inventory.
autonomous inventory. Then you get to true artificial intelligence. We're not going to get there, right? And that's why this is why everybody's struggling with this stuff right now. Is
They're
because
not
we're
willing
just
to do the hard work. They want the easy.
I know.
Everybody wants the easy button, and this is the easy button that's going to turn into the nuke button really quick, because
Yeah.
you're going to burn a lot of money, you're going to burn a lot of cycles, and you're not going to realize any value.
That ties into the last article where CISOs need to hire and develop security talent. Number 1 on the list is AI. Really? Maybe. Like, you're right. We got to get our arms around it. But Jason, to the thing you just said, if this thing just turns out to be a big nothing burger, am I going to go hire a bunch of AI security folks that are going to cost me a tremendous amount of money, right? These guys are not going to be cheap. Anybody that's got experience in this space, like
Do
these
the
are
hard
not
work
cheap
first.
research. Right.
Do the hard work first, and then figure out what your investment from a personnel perspective is. You know,
Exactly.
The one place that concerned me about this article was a focus on the cross-functional employee.
Yeah, that you're going exactly where I was thinking.
Listen, I mean,
it's
the
BS.
jack of all trades, the jack of all trades is dangerous at this point, right? I mean, we're not in a place where the jack of all trades works anymore, right? If you're in an SMB organization and you have 3 IT people who need to moonlight as a cyber and a data and a this, back in the day that was fine. These days we need subject matter experts. Number one, you're not going to be able to find the unicorn that you need that knows data analytics, cybersecurity, AI. Like, you're not going to find that unicorn. So stop trying. You need to
And
have
I don't actually think that's how the hiring is going right now.
No.
Like I
I don't think so either.
No, it's
Yeah.
very specialized. Like it's getting,
Yes.
it's getting more and more specialized, right?
Yeah.
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 No,
Their whole
that's
point
the
on like AI hires.
Well,
Well,
that focus was concerning.
don't worry about AI hires. Just give that to everyone as an additional.
Yeah,
function.
everybody's an
Very
AI engineer.
specialized.
Along with cybersecurity engineer and data engineer and help desk.
Right.
IR, third party. Yeah.
Right.
Kick it
Yeah.
on the list.
Yeah. Good luck finding them and
I know.
all in one person.
Oh, they'll
Plus,
be cheap too. They'll be very
oh,
inexpensive.
they'll be super
Oh,
cheap,
yeah,
and my
exactly.
budget's going to expand to support all this new headcount. Not. Not. Always a pleasure. Thank you
Yes.
for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.